I was working on a project yesterday and I shut down for the night. I've restarted Creative Studio this morning. I'm going to click OK. Now, I don't move my machine to any particular spot to do this. Wherever the machine is parked, that's where I use as the point of origin, because I'm not concerned about having to come back to that exact point of origin. That's just the way I do it. Others do it differently. Do it the way that it works for you. Now I need to go and find my project. Click on File, Open Project, and it'll come up with a screen with all the different projects, and I'll go and select the one that I need. I know that this project belongs to a particular customer, and here is the list of quilts that I have quilted for her. This is the one right here that I started on February the 12th. I'm just going to click on it, open it, and when it comes up, I will do a relocate, shift all to one point. Here's my project, and it's not lined up, but I'm going to do a relocate so that I can make sure that the pattern field is where it's supposed to be. Before I shut down, I let the machine go to the start point of this row and take a stitch. I pulled up the bobbin thread and I cut the bobbin thread. I left a thread tail underneath 3 or 4 inches, and I secured the top part of that thread to a pin so it wouldn't get removed. Have the machine sitting at that spot. I'll just right click somewhere. It doesn't matter where. I'll do a relocate, shift all to one point. I'm going to turn on the end snap. You can see that that's now highlighted, and I'm going to let it snap it to the start point of the first repeat in the next row to quilt. I'm going to put my mouse cursor there. I'm going to left click, and I'm going to wait for the instructions to come up on screen. As soon as the instructions come up on screen, I'm going to click yes, and Creative Studio is going to realign all of the patterns right to that very same point. In my email that I sent earlier today, I talked about the fact that if you use the needle and you do your relocating, whatever you're trying to do, aligning something, see where something is, if you use the needle, that's the most precise, accurate pointer to use. And the needle and the crosshair right here are at the same place. They will be that way unless something has gone wrong with your encoder system. Either your belts are too loose or whatever, defective encoder, or for some reason the encoder wheel is not being turned like it's supposed to be. So right there, the needle and the crosshair are at the start point of the first repeat in the next row to be quilted. The only thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to check the alignment of the pattern in this row on the left side of the quilt and on the right side of the quilt. And I'm not one to use a lot of boundaries unless I have a quilt that's really has uneven sides. And I'll just use the crosshair. This looks good on the right side, or the left side rather. I'll go to the right side with the machine, and I'm going to check to see how the pattern is aligned. If you read the email that I posted, you'll see that I talked about the fact that for various reasons the quilt not rolling, or the quilt width changing slightly, and that does happen on this particular quilt because of the way the quilt is made. This looks good on the right side. It may be a little bit too far to the right. I'll adjust that before I quilt. and then I'll quilt this row. When it gets to the end of this last repeat in this row, I'll cut the bobbin threads. I'll physically take the machine back to the left side of the quilt. I'll click OK and let the machine go to the start point of this first repeat in the next row. Take a stitch, and again I'll pull up the bobbin thread, cut the thread tail underneath, secure the top part of that bobbin thread, and roll the quilt. Place the machine at that point, do another relocate, shift all this one point, and I'll be good to go to quilt another row. I have finished quilting that row, and I have cut the bobbin thread. Let the machine take a stitch at the start point of the next row, which is right in this spot right here, and just bring up the bobbin thread, cut the thread, secure the thread to a pin so that it doesn't get removed. I'll roll the quilt. I will right click, select, relocate, shift all to one point. I'll have the needle sitting at the start point of this row, and I'll tell it yes, I want to do that, and it will just shift the pattern field exactly where it needs to be. I have rolled the quilt, and you can see that the needle indicates that the crosshair indicates the needle is way up there, but in fact the needle isn't sitting right at that point right there. So I'm just going to right click over here somewhere to get my menu, go to relocate, shift all to one point. End snap is turned on. Go and let it snap to the end point of the first repeat in this row. I'm going to click on that with the mouse, click yes when it comes up, and let Creative Studio do all the pattern alignment. There you have it. All the pattern have been shifted around the start point of the first repeat in this next row, and all I need to do now is check the alignment of the pattern on the left side and on the right side. I drew a boundary because you can see on the left side this quilt is starting to go a little bit wonky on me. It's working its way out this way to the left because that's just the way the quilt is made. So I'll have to adjust this row. I went ahead and made my boundary large, and the next row I'm going to have to adjust this to fit this area right here. So I'm going to do the adjustment, then I'm going to quilt this next row. Creative Studio crashed on me before I was finished with my previous recording, and I had to shut everything down to get Creative Studio back up and running. So that meant I had to save my previous recording and then start a new recording to try to finish up what I was doing. And I was saying before, this quilt is varying on the left side of the quilt quite a bit, and I'm going to do a relocate and I'll draw a boundary and show you how much this quilt has changed. And one of the reasons why I like to use repeat patterns for my edge-to-edge work is I can compensate for the sides changing. In the edge-to-edge mode, once you put in a boundary at the very start, clicking upper left, upper right, lower left, and all that, that boundary is fixed. So if your quilt changes, then it's more difficult to deal with irregular sides when you're using the edge-to-edge mode. So now I'm going to do a relocate and draw a boundary. I've drawn my boundary, relocated the patterns using relocate, shift all to one point. I've drawn the boundary. Everything looks like it's good to go. I'm going to be able to, the sides, the left and the right, look good. So I'm just going to quilt and continue to use relocate, shift all to one point. Maybe this will help someone. that's trying to do edge-to-edge work and having difficulty with the edge-to-edge mode, you can do your edge-to-edge work in repeat patterns. I have seen several occasions where there were posts about running out of pattern and having quilt left down here at the bottom, and I've also saw occasions where the end of the quilt was like up here somewhere and you had too much pattern. And I always start measuring before I get to the end of the quilt. I've just measured this quilt to see how much space was left to be quilted, and then I check the amount of pattern left to be quilted just to get an idea of how I'm doing pattern wise. I have about 42.5 inches of quilt top left, and as you can see here on the screen, I have 44.21 inches of pattern that has not been quilted yet. So I'm not going to make an adjustment at this time. I'll quilt another row, probably 2 rows, and then when I get down to the last 2 rows, I will measure and adjust the pattern so that when I get to the end, if I have to make an adjustment, it will be a very, very small adjustment in this.